Welcome to Murfreesboro Storytellers. For our program this month, we are pleased to have as our guest John Callow, who is Community Development Director for the City of Murfreesboro. John, welcome.
Well, thank you, John. I've been watching you do this for a couple of years now, and I've got stories to tell too, so I'm glad to be part of this.
I know you do, and that's the reason we have you as our guest. John, my first acquaintance with you was a journalist with the Daily News Journal a few years ago.
Oh yeah, that was my third career. I was, you remember, I was the oldest cub reporter in the world at one point.
Okay.
And that was a really great introduction to this community. I'd gone to high school down in Bell Buckle, and then
to Webb School.
Yeah, and I worked there for a couple of years, and then left Middle Tennessee, and opportunity came up back in the '80s to move back to Middle Tennessee, and I said, I'll go if you'll let me live in Murfreesboro.
Oh, very good.
So,
and you're a native of Memphis, is that correct?
I grew up in Memphis, yeah.
John, how long have you been in this particular position?
I've been with the city for going on 12 years now.
Okay.
And at a point 12 years ago, the position came open, and I had done a story about affordable housing, and which is a lot of what we do. We talk a lot about affordable housing in the Community Development Department, and the job came open, and I applied for it, and Roger Haley hired me, and then I started learning about community development.
I can imagine. It apparently entails a number of issues.
Does indeed. Our primary tasks are administering a community development block grant, which is federal money through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. That's, this year it's just a tad less than $750,000. We also administer an emergency solutions grant, which is HUD money, but that comes through the state of Tennessee, about $150,000, and that's a pass-through for emergency homeless shelters. So we fund the Salvation Army shelter, or we help fund, because what we've got just covers a small part of the overall budgets. The Coldest Nights program is paid for with some of our money. We've got some funding that goes to the domestic violence program for their shelter, and then the Doors of Hope shelter. So that's where we've got our fingers in a lot of different pies. I represent the mayor on the Homeless Alliance of Rutherford County on that executive board, so we're involved in that. We're also very much involved in fair housing, and we're coming up on the 50th anniversary here in April of the Fair Housing Act, so that's also part of our responsibility.
Going back to homelessness, is that a major problem in our community?
It is. It is. There are part of the problem is there are multiple definitions from the federal standpoint of homelessness. So HUD has got a definition which is fairly restrictive. We just did a point-in-time count in January. It's someplace around 315, I think. We're still working on the final numbers.
The number of homeless in our community?
Yeah. Now that would have been on that one night in January, but the Department of Education has a very different definition, and they also do a count, and it was someplace around 1,600. So those are children K through 12 in the county school system who are considered homeless by that definition. And then you figure that each one of them has got a sibling that's under school age, so you double that, and half that for at least a parent for each of those children, and now you're talking about a real problem.
I guess so. Do we also have a number of families living in motels?
The school definition would pick those up.
Okay, that would be included in that homeless number?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. The HUD definition that 315, some of them get counted, some of them don't. You start getting into semantics. Who's paying for that room that night? That would make a difference in how HUD defines whether or not they would count.
How in the world do you do an assessment? How do you come up with those numbers?
You have lots of volunteers.
Okay, all right.
And we have the Homeless Alliance has we do our work through working groups. And so there's a service delivery working group that is the agencies that deal with these issues throughout the county. Okay. And they make it their business to do the count. And so they're making the calls to doing the counts in the shelters, but they're also going out and trying to find the unsheltered folks.
Okay.
Because there are folks out in the camps, and we tried very hard to get them to come in that particular night. We opened the Journey Home's Coldest Nights program to try and get them in, but they're still out there.
Where is that located?
The men are at First Baptist Church.
Okay.
And the women are put up at St. Paul's Episcopal Church.
Okay. So churches are very active.
Oh,
in this,
absolutely.
as they should be.
Absolutely, yeah.
You mentioned the anniversary of the Fair Housing Act.
Yeah.
Now, how does that affect you? How are you involved with that?
Well, when Congress passed the Fair Housing Act in 1968, in April of 1968, they assigned responsibility for enforcing the Fair Housing Act to the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And so as a community development block grant subrecipient, that's how HUD passes the responsibility on down to the local level. And so that I'm the Fair Housing Officer for the city of Murfreesboro.
How does an agency go about making an application to you for assistance?
Well, we have a program, the regulations for the block grant allow us to use up to 15% of our funding to assist nonprofit agencies to provide services to low and moderate income folk. And so we have a process. We put out a notice of funding availability in January each year. Okay. And we post that on the website. We put it out through the United Way's charity tracker system. We put it out through the Homeless Alliance. We try to get the word out that we've got this money available that has to be used inside the city of Murfreesboro. That's part of the rule, since we get the money. And there's an application then, and there's the application process just finished up in 28th of February. So we've got 14 applications now that we've got under consideration. We've got a committee that will score those applications, and then we'll come back at our public hearing on the 12th of April, which will be at Patterson Park, 6 o'clock. Anybody in the public that would like to come talk to us about how it's their money, it's the public's money. We want to know how the public wants us to spend it. So we'll be having that public hearing on April 12th, and we will announce our recommendations then for public service grant funding.
Is all of your funding from the federal sources?
Yeah. Yeah, we have operated traditionally without general fund money. So all of our money, all of our administrative expenses come through the block grant.
How large a staff do you have?
It's me, it's my grant coordinator, Patty Pope, and it's our administrative specialist, Tracy DeMasi. We do a lot of work with 3 people.
I can imagine. And where are you located?
Our office is at McFadden Community Center at 211 Bridge Avenue.
Okay. That right there by the McFadden School?
Right across the parking lot. We share the parking lot. Don't try to come to see us at school getting out of town.
Oh,
You'll never get through the line.
Does the county of Rutherford have a similar agency, organization, office?
They do not,
okay.
But they were able to, last year, to get some funding from THDA for some housing rehabilitation. One of the things that we do with our CDBG money is rehab work. We put about a third of our money each year in rehab. We've got a number of projects working right now, in fact.
For instance?
If you're a low-income homeowner, you've got some issues with your house.
What's the level of low income?
It's 80% of the area median income, which is kind of gobbledygook. But the median income in this for our metropolitan statistical area is $64,000. And so what HUD does is put out a chart every year, adjusting for that. And somebody who's interested in that can go to the city website, because we've got that chart up on the website. But for a household of 4, that's someplace around $40,000, I think.
So to qualify.
Yeah. So all of our programs are for low and moderate income residents. So if you're a homeowner and you live in your house and you've got some issues and you're having trouble paying for them, we can help you with that. We did a walkthrough with contractors yesterday for a house, and we're going to have to do some interior work because she's having some floor issues in our bathrooms. Well, we're going to take care of that. And so in that case, we had 4 contractors show up yesterday for the walkthrough. We'll open bids next week and award a contract and get that work done. Sometimes you get into a house and the problems are so extensive that it's not feasible to go in and rehab. And in that case, there is a provision that we can do what's called a reconstruct. We can't do new construction with our money, but we could do a reconstruct, which means we'll go in, we'll tear down the old house, and we'll build a new house on that lot.
Location.
Yeah, and we've got, we do about 1, I think the most we've ever done is 2 in a year, but we usually do about 1 of those a year. We've got 1 right now that we're working on.
What would be the average amount that you would do for something like that? I guess it varies from house to house.
It will vary from house to house, but for a straight rehab, we're going to invest someplace probably $25,000 or less. Now, in the case of a reconstruct, it's
considerably more.
Closer to $100,000. Now, it helps that the homeowner is bringing the lot. But what this has been kind of our philosophy on the reconstructs. We are going to want to put back what we build back is going to end up being the best house on the block. Because what we find is when we do one of these projects, the other homeowners on the block are encouraged to, they see what's happening, and so
make them want to improve their.
They start. I remember we did a project. We had a really interesting project 4 or 5 years ago. We had a gentleman referred to us by Habitat. He had done some work for them. He was semi-retired, and a tree fell through his roof. And so he went to Habitat and said, "Can you help me?" And they said, "We can't, but we know somebody who can." And we looked at the house, and we did we did the inspections, and we said, "You know what? This is a reconstruction." And so Habitat actually did the work. They became our contractor on that project.
You funded it, they did the work.
Yeah, and so that ended up being the 100th Habitat house in Rutherford County.
Wonderful.
It was cool, and what we saw was as soon as we started doing our work, the other, we had a lot of rental property on that street. And the owners of that rental property were coming in, and they were painting and fixing up and improving their, and then there were other houses. Habitat ended up doing some more construction on that street, and their exteriors were upgraded. So by upgrading that one house, we improved the entire street. And that's how you fix neighborhoods. Sometimes one house at a time.
And I was going to ask you, how do you differ from Habitat for Humanity, or obviously you work together?
We do work with Habitat quite a bit. For many years, we have put money aside, community development block grant money, to help them acquire a building lot each year. And what they're finding now is that building lots are fewer and harder to find.
I can imagine.
Yeah, and
more expensive too. I'm sure.
That has turned out to be a real problem for them. So they've got a project they're working on right now that we're helping them with. They've found two pieces of property that are going through the annexation process, and as soon as they're annexed, we're going to help them. We've got $100,000 that we're going to help them buy those two lots. That's going to turn into a 74-unit subdivision.
Wonderful.
Yeah, over a course of 10 years. Right. So that's 74 units of affordable housing that don't exist in Murfreesboro right now. Mm-hmm. And we know from the work that we have to do, the planning work we have to do for HUD, that we have got a real shortage of affordable housing in this community. Affordable for, there's a shortage of affordable rental housing. There's a shortage of affordable housing for potential home buyers. So we're going to help Habitat buy that, purchase that, what will become a subdivision. And then next year, since we're not able to actually put money into building new houses, we're going to help them build the sewer system that will go to this new subdivision. So we're really looking forward to that project.
How does a homeowner who needs some rehabilitation work on their home and can't afford it, how do they go about applying to you for assistance?
They need to call our office on Bridge Avenue, and it's 615-890-4660. Ask for Tracy DeMasi. She does our administrative support person. She does all the intake. She'll walk the homeowner through the process. Since it's all income-based, we have to build a file, and so there are steps that you go through, and then once we've got the income certified, then she turns it over to me and one of the codes inspectors from the Building and Codes Department. We go out, we inspect the house, we decide what needs to be done, we do a work write-up. We meet with the homeowner again, say, is this what you think needs to be done? And if they sign off, then we do a walkthrough, we put it out to bid, and we bring a contractor in and get it done.
Approximately how many would you do in a year's time?
We will do 10 to 12 projects a year. Now, not all of those projects are going to be the big projects.
Okay.
Because we also have, as part of that rehab program, we've got the major reconstruction part. We do major rehabs, but we also do emergency projects. This year we had several folks who had heat go out. I remember we had a lady when called. We were getting ready to have some 12-degree weather. Okay. Her HVAC system had died. We were able to do some work, and we had a new HVAC system in for her within a week.
Wonderful.
So we do those. We've also been known to do some emergency work with plumbing. And in connection with that plumbing, we've still got subdivisions out in this city that were built as part of before the city had expanded. Okay. So you've got certain subdivisions. They're served by sewer now, but when the city annexed and ran sewer in, houses that were on septics weren't necessarily required to hook up. Now we've got some septic systems that are nearing the end of that useful life, so we've got a program that we can help pay that sewer tap fee.
Those in any specific area, just generally all over the community?
The ones that I can remember in the last couple of years, we don't get many of those a year, but we get every once in a while we'll get one. And they tend to be in those neighborhoods out Bradyville Pike. Okay. and out around Todd's Lake, and then some up in the old Mitchell Nielsen area.
Okay.
So it's where we've seen those.
You mentioned your website. How does someone reach you through the website?
You start off by going to murfreesborotn.gov.
Okay.
And then you'll have several different ways you can get to us. There's the A to Z, and then there's a listing for neighborhood services, and there's a listing for departments, and we are the Community Development Department. And once you get to the Community Development Department, you'll see flags for our housing rehab program. We've also got a program we call affordable housing. We help about 12 potential homeowners a year, first-time home buyers. We've got a loan program, no interest, no payment, due on the sale of the house. It's a second mortgage for $10,000 to help make we put it together with that first mortgage, and now you've got a more affordable housing payment for that first-time home buyer. So
How do you define affordable housing?
Affordable housing actually has a real live definition with HUD, and HUD says that if you spend 30% or less of your gross income on housing, that's affordable housing. If you spend more than that, that's not necessarily affordable. So affordable can mean that's a moving number. If you're making $500,000 a year, there's an affordable housing number for you.
Okay.
But the real issue comes then, what's affordable for somebody who's in that kind of a price range, somebody who is making $25,000 a year. Now, that becomes very different. And what we have found is we've got a large number of people, households in this community who are paying 50% of their annual income for housing, some more than that, in fact, and that means they're cost burdened. And so we are looking for ways to help reduce that burden.
John, let's summarize all the various aspects of your work.
Yeah, we do a lot.
Obviously.
Most of our budget goes to the housing rehab program. We are required every 5 years by the Department of Housing and Urban Development to do a strategic plan, a 5-year plan. And we did that back in 2015. There's a lot of public input that goes into that. So we want to know what should our priorities be.
And how do you get that input?
We did surveys.
Okay.
We sent surveys to the agencies that we deal with. We sent surveys to a lot of agencies we don't deal with. We put out the word to the public, and we've got the public hearings that we do every year. So what we were looking for was the public to tell us, given within the restraints of the program, and we have certain regulatory restraints, given those restraints, where should we be putting our resources? And what the public told us is, we want you to keep doing the rehab program, which we've been doing as long as we've had CDBG. We want you to keep doing the down payment assistance program. We want you to keep doing the public service grants. Unfortunately, the rule says 15% is all we can spend, so we push that to the max.
Define public service grant.
That's the work that we do with the nonprofit agencies.
Okay, all right.
Okay. And then they also said that we need to work on affordable housing that is not related to the down payment assistance. So that's why we help Habitat acquire a lot. And we also, they also said, though, we're concerned about this problem of housing affordability from a rental standpoint. Well, you can only do so much with $750,000. So we got to looking at, and we talked to our peers around the country. How are other cities approaching this, especially other cities that are our size, that have our size grant? And a lot of them were saying, we help nonprofits acquire rental units that they'll use for rentals. And so we put that program in year before last.
Okay.
Been very successful. We will help a nonprofit with up to $100,000 to acquire a piece of property, an existing piece of property that will be used then. It's in our contract with them that for the next 10 years, that is going to be a rental unit for a household at 50% or below the area median income, which is a very low income household.
I'd say.
Yeah, and so last year we were able to help Greenhouse Ministry acquire a couple of duplexes and Doors of Hope acquire a single family residence. So for $200,000, we've got 5 units of affordable housing. So that's another thing that we are doing.
Just amazing. I had no idea that your office encompasses so many operations here in this community.
Yeah, and then I think though that what we've been, if I were to talk about what we've been successful at over the last 12 years, we've been able to become a connecting point for all these nonprofit agencies. 12 years ago, there were agencies that didn't know other agencies exist. Now they're working as partners.
As we conclude, give us your location and your phone number.
We are located at McFadden Community Center, 211 Bridge Avenue, and our phone number is 615-890-4660. And we're also on the city website, murfreesborotn.gov, under Community Development, and all of our programs are there, and we'd love to hear from folks.
John, thank you so much.
It was great, John.
Yeah, we've enjoyed having John Callow, Community Development Director for the City of Murfreesboro, as our guest on Murfreesboro Storytellers. It's a problem affecting the entire country, the ongoing opioid epidemic. On next month's episode of Murfreesboro Storytellers, we learn about how this issue is being tackled locally.